Good evening. I'd like to call out to order Open Space Land Acquisition, Farmland Preservation Subcommittee for July 23rd at 6 p.m., council chambers. Anybody from the public? Do we have any Zoom-ins? Nobody's here presently. Okay. Approval of minutes from June 25th, 2024.
I wasn't here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if we can approve them
Guess
without.
we'll have to
You weren't here?
approve them next.
Yeah.
Next month. Skip that. Item number 4, discussion community gardens. We have Jill,
We have,
you know how to say her last name, Ray?
I believe it's Jill Desamini,
Okay.
Associate Professor for UConn, the Plant Science and Agricultural Department. We had a discussion with her last week regarding community gardens and if UConn could lend some assistance on how to get this whole thing up and running and maybe even laying out the gardens and recommendations and soils and all that. So
Great.
Jill was kind enough to come tonight and introduce herself and maybe have a brief introduction to the program and what we're looking for, and maybe giving her some feedback for future meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill, for joining us.
Uh-oh. We can't hear you.
Oh, no.
Maybe it's on our end.
A mute on our screen?
No,
I don't think so.
no, hang on.
She's not muted.
Okay.
Our IT,
Can you hear us?
Okay.
yep.
Can you hear me without the headphones?
Now we got you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I think maybe it's the headphones.
Okay.
Technology
Can you
is
hear me?
fantastic.
Absolutely.
We got you.
Okay, because I see myself twice, but. Anyways, hi, welcome. I'm Jill Desimini, as mentioned, Program Director and Associate Professor of Landscape Architecture at UConn. And I think my predecessor, Peter Minuti, worked on this particular project. The town, via Ray, reached out, interested in some assistance with the community gardens and farm aspect of the project. And as I mentioned, we had a conversation, or as mentioned, we had a conversation last week and talked about our program, which is a professionally accredited undergraduate program in landscape architecture, where we have around 80 students and soon to be 5 faculty members, and that we do a number of service learning projects with towns and communities across Connecticut. And so we had talked about this potentially being part of a service learning component for our students, as well as a way to assist the town to provide layouts and recommendations for the community farm this fall. I'll stop there, I guess.
Yeah, I had explained briefly the whole project from start to finish, you know, what we were doing. We were leasing out 30 some odd acres to local farmers. UConn helped us develop Parcel A, the homestead section where we have the barn now, which is phase 1, and how the committee would like to start on the community gardens aspect. And I had invited Jill just to see if the committee is interested in getting their assistance through their program, and if they are, and if you are, then we can continue, and I can work with Jill in the future to get things rolling, coming back, you know, periodically for updates, working with the committee to find out, you know, what you're thinking, maybe what your recommendations are for each step. So maybe we can just start a quick conversation with, since we have Jill here right now. If you have any
Absolutely.
questions, concerns.
Councilman Savini, have any questions?
Actually, I wasn't here last week when you started the discussion, so, I mean, in what capacity do we need design help with this garden? Where to place it? Is that where the assistance would come from?
I believe the design would be, we kind of know we know where the general location, but it would be, how do we determine how big we want the beds? How are we going to manage this? How are we going to set up the actual program? They can do soil sampling for the bed areas. Do we want fencing? Those kinds of things. Do we want pathways? Do we want raised beds? We don't want raised beds. The program, I believe, is designed to help the committee determine those different aspects of the project.
And then the ongoing assistance would come in the form of,
Well, it wouldn't be ongoing. It would be the project
just to get it off the ground?
off the ground and then recommendations to be
Okay.
implemented by the committee and the town.
And have you worked on many other projects, Jill?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, so maybe to sort of add to that piece of it. Yeah, so it would be assistance with our undergraduate students who do service learning projects, on the kind of layout considerations, the materials, the fencing, how big the beds, how to kind of manage them. They could do sort of research around that and propose, I guess, different schemes for how the layouts could take place. In terms of my background, so I am a registered landscape architect in the state of Connecticut. I practiced for about 10 years and have been then in academia teaching for the past 14 years. So I've taught previously graduate school for 12 years, and I've been at the UConn program for 2 years. So that's that piece of it. In terms of a community, I mean, I've done a number of public projects for various towns that include community gardens, as well as some research around various community gardens, actually on a kind of global scale. I wouldn't say that I'm a sort of expert by any means in community farms and gardens. I think the idea was just to, get the project rolling, to kind of provide visuals and layouts and backs and forth between us and the town regarding the project, even phasing ideas if you have certain amounts of money at the beginning and how you might carry it forward. I would actually be in a sort of supervisory role with another faculty member who teaches the studio directly, and then after the sort of engagement with the students would advise on the project till you had the materials that you needed to go forward with implementation in the spring. So I don't know if that answers your question entirely, but
No, that does. And then the next question I would have, do you, in terms of what you might recommend in design and whatnot, do you also, if, we had a set a budget to work with, do you dive into that or your students?
yeah, I mean, we would obviously work with the sort of goals and recommendations that you have, the budgets that you have available. I mean, they are learning landscape architecture, so I think they could recommend various projects. I think ultimately, if you go forward with the construction, the materials that we would be able to be provided would be bidded upon. I mean, we could continue to offer support through the bidding process if so I think we could give you a project that would roughly fit your budget, and then work with the process of actually the bid process for the project.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I had just had initial conversations last week, so I don't know that they came to the specifics of, what the budget is, how many plots you are sort of imagining.
We don't know.
These were just introductory conversations.
Yeah, we're not sure either at this point. Again, this is a give and take information.
Trying to get an idea, correct, yeah. I guess.
But the idea would be to give you the materials you would need to go forward on your terms, if that makes sense.
Right, I'm sure there's some base foundational material and whatever, and then there's the wish list stuff, that's what that would come to budget mind for me, by the way. So, I'm good. Fran?
Mrs. Clemens, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Duff?
Yeah, thank you for attending our call. I had a couple questions, kind of thinking about the holistic plan for the park, or the site. One of them is making sure that as we look at the community gardens, it is with a future mindset, both for potential expansion of the community garden footprint. Hopefully it's very successful and people will want, the town will adopt it and people will want to have their own plot. But also we've talked about having things like pedestrian walking trails and other ways of enjoying the site. Because people want to come there and we want to direct their activity to the places that they should go and not be disruptive. So hopefully that is something that is taken into account, or at least, if not as part of this project, something that we can roughly sketch out and have consideration of, because we wouldn't want to have to redo work, right? And we also wouldn't want people to go and then feel that perhaps they could go pick something from somebody's garden. We want to direct the activity to the right spots on site. The other thing that I'd be interested in is understanding more about when we get there, what does like the day-to-day operations look like in terms of a best practice? Is it established? Because we've got, I think, this commission and we report into the town council. We would have oversight, but we meet once a month. Sometimes it gets canceled if not a big agenda. We don't want to burden town staff. So do people usually have like a friends of group or another group that they work with to help handle the day-to-day nuts and bolts of running it, or is there other models? That's something I think would be very interested in hearing what are best practices there, what works for projects like this. And then that was primarily it, other than trying to keep an eye on the future phasing, expansion. How might we roll this out? We're a small town, a lot of this is grant focused, so if we could have it built into chunks that we could pursue, that each one is a win, but it kind of builds, I think that would be very helpful in whatever the final product winds up being.
Yeah, I think that the students would definitely take into consideration the entire parcel. I think with any project we do, we look at adjacencies at various types of constraints and the sort of, I understand that, there's some wetlands, there's some soil conditions, there's some active farmland, and so there's a set of constraints, but like where within that the garden would fit, how it would relate to access, so parking and other types of access, how it might relate to trail systems, which is something that people brought up briefly, that this would be a passive recreation site. So I think those are all things that would definitely be considered with the kind of overall siting of the project, the kind of direction of the plots, as well as the kind of environmental constraints, like what is the slope, where is water draining, where is the sun, all of those kinds of things would be part of the project. So I do imagine that as we would structure the project, there would be, as the previous speaker mentioned, the kind of base conditions that those would be cited relative to future goals, and that you could break down the project into pieces. So I think that part is definitely feasible. In terms of the best practices, I imagine there would also be some research conducted regarding best practices. I think typically, from my knowledge, community gardens have policies, have agreements, and the gardeners who are part of those community gardens do give some time towards the management of the garden overall. So there's like a set of volunteer hours that go towards the overall space. Sometimes there's 1 or 2 community work days at the beginning and end of the season to make sure things are kind of open up well and are tied up well, and then there's like sets of requirements around how you maintain your own space. What are best practices, and those can be as kind of open or as restrictive as is desired. And then usually there's a volunteer manager that's within the garden plot who is a community gardener, but I think that could be a question. So I think typically staff come by on, as you mentioned, like a weekly or bi-weekly basis, just to make sure things are operating the way that they should.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Ms. Gilbert?
And also usually the leases are kind of incremental, so you might, depending on the demand, you might only have a garden plot for 2 or 3 years, or depending on how things are going.
You have anything?
Nope,
Okay, I got a little bit of questions. it seems like very vague what we're talking about. Am we expecting a site plan that you're gonna do, and you're gonna divide up the plots by measurements? Is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I imagine there would be site plans for the plots, I mean, I think generally speaking, you'll want some raised beds just in terms of overall, accommodating overall access and, kind of accessibility within the garden. So generally speaking, some beds are raised. I don't know, if that's been discussed, but you would get an overall site plan with measurements, and dimensions, as well as kind of sections and details, perhaps some views, like perspective views of what the garden would look like, in terms of like getting people excited about being a part of it. And then, I mean, in some ways, these are initial conversations, so the entire scope would be called out a little bit further with an agreement between our program and the town. But any kind of soil samplings, there could be sort of rough budgets, materials, details, if there are raised beds, that kind of thing.
Is this
That
is
helps-
this a
helps
fee?
Clarify things.
Is there a fee attached to this for the town?
There's not a fee attached to it for the town.
No fee.
It's a service
Fee
learning
free.
project,
All right, we're
so
good.
No question.
it's part of our curriculum, essentially. So the students are receiving academic credit for doing the work.
Okay, good. You said there's some
If that makes
budgetary items. I was just wondering, what do you,
Oh, budget in terms of in the budget of the project, like,
Our budget.
Our budget for,
Like providing
For implement.
supplies and,
yeah,
like a
supplies,
cost estimate, like a cost
material.
estimate is
Implement the plan.
the word than
Yeah.
the budget, but.
The fertilizer, the labor, to turn the soils, that kind of thing.
yep, that's all gotta be discussed, yeah, what we wanna do. I mean,
Yep.
We'll deal with that.
But yeah, I think these are initial conversations, at which point I can put together an actual kind of
yes, Steve,
an
may-
agreement and
why don't you jump in on
schedule
this?
and that sort of thing.
If I may, this, we just had this
Yeah.
conversation like on Thursday, I believe, so it's very preliminary. We have had UConn students do projects for us before, for MS4, and, it's a learning for them. So they came out, we toured some sites, they, through their program, did what they have to do to meet their curriculum, and then they did a presentation to us in the end of, I think we had 6 sites on ways to implement some water quality measures. And, no fee to us. And then if we want to do them, well, obviously the town has to pay and implement it ourselves, but we have their report. And I think this is, again, this is only a couple days old. We'll have to have a scope of what we're looking for. This is a good give and take. That's why we're here, taking the notes, and then we can include it in the scope.
It's good.
and broader, I mean, if you want to do this,
Yeah.
This is just an idea I thought would be good to throw out to the subcommittee to see if this is what you want to, if you want to access these resources, and get this community garden thing going.
Sure. Jill, do you develop a plan, a guideline type thing, which each gardener has to adhere to?
Rules and regulations.
Yeah. Do you do that as well, or no?
I mean, we can make recommendations towards it. I was saying in our previous call, we have some, I mean, UConn's a large institution. There are some other folks in Extension who are more on the community agricultural side. We're obviously on the landscape architecture side, so we're looking at the site planning and design aspects. But we can engage with those folks to give some recommendations around policies and procedures. Those would eventually come from the town to the gardeners, but we can obviously both gather samples from other places, as well as make recommendations and make connections to the extension folks that we know who are on the community agricultural side.
Great. That'd be helpful too. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. We'll develop our own guidelines, but if you had any recommendations, would be helpful. Do we have to vote on this, or just
No.
verbally agree, say?
Yeah, it's-
Sounds like a great idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
I think we
kinda.
start with get the report, their opinion.
Does the recommendation have to go to council to look favorably on it, or just the
No, this
sense
is
of this committee is fine?
Looks good.
Do we know how much of an area we're proposing to do for a community garden at this point?
I don't know, we don't know the area, square footage, but we know where it is.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's, when you go in the driveway,
Yep.
Yeah.
that area that was just
Yep.
cleared, that area was recommended as the best area.
What I'm thinking is we're gonna have to do some updating of the plans we have. We have an as-built from the company that did the remediation, but I think we'd still go out there and verify some info, give UConn some base mapping to go off of. And that way we know the area.
Great. I think it's a good idea. Thanks for town manager for bringing Jill in.
Yep.
Appreciate that. That was awesome.
Just, I'm sorry,
Sure.
what do we think the timeline looks like? I don't think we talked about that.
Ah,
We have a initial proposal from the professor. Some of the dates work, some don't. So we have to work on, we may have to do like a special meeting, you know how we did some field walks in the past? You know, that would be a special meeting, or maybe one or two of the,
Okay.
one counselor and some of the other volunteers can go out and take a look and walk with the students or with UConn at the very beginning. So we have to work on that schedule.
Okay.
So we'll work around your schedule and then staff schedule.
if I may. So Jill mentioned that, the students, the classes start August 26th. So students wouldn't really be up and running until probably after Labor Day. So we might be able to have the students in, from whether it be virtual or in person, we're not sure. The September meeting, the October meeting, because we meet the fourth Tuesday. The November and December meeting are out because that's, campus is closed for the holidays, whether it be Thanksgiving or that'll be Christmas break, or day before Christmas, or somewhere in there. So that's what we're talking about, possibly some other, special meeting. So maybe they could do a presentation to us with their findings.
I imagine maybe 3 presentations to the subcommittee in this process.
Yeah, I think some, if I might jump in, some would probably include the students and some would be just either me or the other faculty involved and myself kind of presenting. We do both things, so we like our students to hear direct feedback as part of their learning process, but also sometimes we can synthesize the projects and present them if the schedule permits. So I think we could present at one of those later dates. It just would be outside of the student engagement.
Sounds great.
So we're talking, the earliest is going to be late September.
September.
Okay.
But we'll work with, in the
No,
meantime.
I'm doing the yep,
Good.
that's great.
Yes. Sounds great.
Good.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Good. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks
Yeah.
for all your help.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
Thanks
be,
for
Forward to
having me.
working with you.
I'll be
Thanks for
getting back to you,
bringing
Jill.
the Opportunity to us. Yep, I will look for some more correspondence.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, nice to
Bye.
meet you all.
Bye.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
See ya.
Have a nice evening.
Yep.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, item number 5, executive session.
But, pardon me,
Sorry.
before you jump into that, I'd like to just distribute this little matrix I did real quick with the aid of one of our staff's children. So this is community garden survey of just some of the towns we knew had community gardens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take a look at this real quick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, Matt, you want it digitally?
Thank you. I'll give one to Mrs. Cornelio.
Yeah. So, what you see here is, I have the size of the plots. We have, We looked at South Windsor, they have 2 locations. Farmington, they have 1 location, but 2 different sizes. Weathersfield has a location. Newington, Cromwell. Cromwell was very vague on their website. And the plots go anywhere from 10 to 20, 10 by 20, which is 200 square feet, up to 50 by 50, which is 2,500 square feet. That's a lot. And then you can see the costs, and then you have the cost per square foot. So, you're anywhere from a penny a square foot to lease up to 18 cents a square foot. Average is like 10. The average area, I got somewhere in 800 square feet. That's pretty big. That's something that they would need to recommend. Can you get more than one? Basically, no to every town except South Windsor. The household can have 2. An individual can have 1. Everybody has published rules on their website, rules and regulations. That was a question you guys asked. This is who manages the garden. I'm not sure, because I didn't do this research, I'm not sure if this is who manages or who manages, not the field, in the field, but who manages the program back in the office. So you see Park and Rec seems to be the favorite. The town manager in Farmington, right?
Yeah, we have to take Farmington off.
And more Cromwell's town planner, pilot on Kim. Yes.
Town planner is good.
Yeah. So, and then everybody has water available. Farmington is, you got to go down to the river and grab it, or that's the way, her notes read. They are right adjacent to the river. It does flood. And then how do you get one? It seems like everybody's first come, first serve. And hours. Some people have hours posted. Weathersfield's 8 a.m. to midnight, which, and Farmington said 8:30 to 4:30, which I think is not accurate. I think that was probably the hours of the office, because I live there and I've seen people out there sunset. So just a little information for you guys.
Excellent information.
Yeah, thank you very much for gathering that.
Is that the cost of like a per season or month?
Yes.
Or, okay,
No, that's per year,
okay,
the way I read it.
okay.
So it's not much.
That's very helpful information, thanks. Anybody got any questions off of that?
I know South Windsor's, their hours, I used to drive by there like 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, so they're open past then. People were out there like early in the morning and late at night.
My guess would be dawn to dusk.
Right,
Yeah.
that's reasonable.
There.
I don't understand midnight. Just farming worms at light out.
Great.
By the way, is that first come, first serve every year? Or
Yes.
do you get your,
It
You get
it would
your
appears
plot
to be
back.
first. I think you get your plot back. I mean, this again was Kim's daughter. She was in the office, asked her if she wanted to do it. She said, "Yeah, I'll go look," but we didn't get too in depth.
Nice.
That's questions that we can certainly ask the students to get into.
no, just that, so we could be a very long wait list
Correct.
if you get first right of refusal.
Yeah. Well, I think the professor was saying that if you have that huge waiting list, after maybe 2 or 3 years, you got to rotate out and somebody else goes, just to be fair.
Right.
Yeah.
Or potentially we expand it. I mean,
Because otherwise, you're like
Or
these.
expand, right.
Otherwise, you're like these super successful sports teams where they have licenses and they will them to their kids and all this crazy stuff. We gonna talk to Giants, Ray?
Can we get in line first?
Oh, my.
the PSLs.
Yeah.
This is a bet.
That's it's useful information, though. It'll help us set the
Yeah.
guidelines for what we want to do for our plots, for sure. Thank you. Anything else with that? Okay, guess we'll go look for a motion for executive session.
Well, you know what, I just,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just thinking out loud, because at some point, we're gonna get to a budget on this. And that does seem like, how many plots do we think the one thing I don't see here is the total amount of area for each one of these places. So how many plots they actually give out? Is
Yeah,
it-
that wasn't available on their website since we didn't make any phone calls. She just
Okay,
did some
okay, yeah.
quick research on the web.
Because then will tell me how much money they got coming in from the
Right.
community garden versus just, okay, it's $35 per plot, so.
I mean, 10 by 20 is very small.
I
20
know,
Square
yeah.
feet.
Well, what are we generally looking at? Do we have a general idea?
We don't have an idea. That's
Because
part of the recommendation.
Originally, when we started this, the gardens were going to be on the other side, and there was a couple of acres of, it was in the wetland areas.
Yeah.
And it was a large area, so it was, we were gonna, okay, we'll go over this over the number of years and increase as we go along, depending on the amount of activity and interest.
Well, it would be good to have expansion capability,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Okay.
But those are all, hopefully, we can maybe work on it and also get information from this, additional detailed information, plus information from UConn on that.
Right, okay.
Let's just say raw numbers, if you have an acre and you had, say, 20 by 20 plots, in theory, you can get 100 in there, but you'd still need some walkways and that kind of
Right,
thing.
yeah,
So it's roughly 100. And say it's
So that's
$35
what,
bucks.
So that's 3,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to make sure.
It's not a money-making kind
No,
of
no,
thing. I don't
no.
know if
I
it's
just don't want it to be a
self-sustaining is what you're after, yeah.
Right, right. Okay, we won't know that, so that's fine. Future, yes. I'll make a motion
Okay,
to move to executive session.
I'll second it. All in favor? Me and you, aye. Okay. Yep.
All right. Make a motion to have public comment at this point,
Amend the agenda,
and then,
to add new business,
Yep.
and then the agenda to add new business,
community garden discussion.
community garden, further discussion.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have a guest. Just please introduce yourself and
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
My name's Alicia Cornelio. I live at 327 Whitewood Drive, Rocky Hill. 3 years ago, this committee tasked me with doing some research on the community gardens. I'm a member of the Rocky Hill Garden Club, and I'm also a master gardener. Most of you were not on the committee at the time, and I believe that the 2 documents I submitted were lost. And as a result, I'd like to resubmit them to you because I think they'll be very helpful to answer a lot of your questions that I'm hearing today. What I did is I talked actually in person with the people that run the community gardens in Weathersfield and Cromwell, and I got detailed information on many of the things that you are questioning. You know, how many plots they have, what they charge, many of their policies that they have in running it, who runs it. Ray, you probably won't be happy about this, but it's the town manager for both of those towns. It's detailed on how, you know, if they have structures, if they have access to water. I think this is going to be very valuable to you when you design the ones here. So I did send it as an attachment to Daniel. So if you want, you can ask him to please forward those documents to you. Also, I got some information from the American Community Garden Association. It's a national organization that provides guidelines on how you begin to start a community garden, many things you need to consider. It's all outlined in the second document that I submitted 3 years ago. So I just want to make you aware that this stuff exists and will be very valuable to you as you go forward in your decisions for the community garden here for Rocky Hill. I just want to make you aware that this has all been done and it's been sitting around for 3 years and ready for you to really take a look at.
Thank you. We're just
Okay.
getting, well, if you don't mind, maybe a couple questions.
Sure.
Thank you for gathering all this information, but this is the time now that we're actively developing these gardens, so I'm glad you
Apology.
resubmitted it to us. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Duff, any questions?
Always got a few loaded. First of all, thank you for coming, and thank you for resubmitting and as a refresher. And it's good that we'll have it on the information on the video for folks who can watch as well. One of the things I thought was interesting was, and just quickly glancing over, they said they didn't have raised beds in Weathersfield and Cromwell. And one of the things, as I understand, the raised beds help is with accessibility. It's harder to get down. It's easier for kids to reach up. So it kind of helps out both ends there. Didn't know if you had any perspective on those. And also generally, is the garden club interested in either as individual members or as an organization working with the town to help share some expertise or managing the site once we get it up and running?
Yes, the reason I've been coming to these meetings is I've been representing the Rocky Hill Garden Club, and every meeting I have been reporting back to them at our meetings about things that have been decided. And we've been waiting, and we're eager to get started. Also, I'm a master gardener, and there are a lot of master gardeners in town. And I've been editor of the newsletter for 10 years for that national organization. And so that's another resource because they submit, they give grants out for projects exactly like this, and you can apply for a grant every year and get monies to help you, get the materials for raised beds, to even buy plants or anything, tools, anything you need to get started. So that is a very valuable resource as well.
And one of the things I think would be interested, because we've always been talking about this site as having an educational component as well, and some of that is perhaps with an eye on the schools, but it would also be helpful to, if we've got master gardeners in town and people who are interested in doing teaching of, adult education or really anybody who'd be interested to learn using it for that type of events as well. So I don't know if that's something that the club would be interested in, but I'm sure that could be a benefit to the town if all logistics worked out. Hopefully that's something that we could potentially do and help share that knowledge, because a lot of it is, of course, learned through experience.
Yeah, I think that educational demo gardens would be very valuable. We recently toured Meg's Point at Hammonasset. I don't know if you've ever been to that garden. It's all native plantings, perennials and shrubs, and Sustainability is a big topic right now in terms of gardening, and if you had some demonstration gardens that these groups would commit to creating and maintaining, it would be very valuable for the public to see this, to get ideas for their homes and other places.
Thank you.
Okay?
Councilman Savini?
Anything else?
No, I like this information. This is, it looks like we might even be able to offer more than these other community gardens. So I think you'd be instrumental in being part of the discussions.
Excellent.
Ms. Gilbert?
I'm good, thank you.
Mrs. Clemens?
I'm good as well.
So we're done. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for that information.
Make a motion to go executive session?
Second it. All in favor? Aye.
Make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good
All right,
evening.
thank you.
Goodbye, guys.